Hi, welcome back to another week of storytelling. Glad to be here. This week, I want to share a story with you. I want to pay tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I want to set my own story in motion like this to give thanks to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. One morning, God decided to take a walk in his beautiful rose garden. While he was walking, he noticed to his right there was a rose that stood out more than the others did. It had a glow to it. So he walked over to that rose, and that rose had Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., April 4th, 1968. He reached down and he picked up the rose, and he summoned two of his angels to come to him. And when the angels came to him, he said, I want you to go down to Memphis, Tennessee. And I want you to go to the hospital. There you will find a warrior of mine who I have called home to take his rest. You see, when this warrior was inside of his mother's womb, I anointed him to lead my people out of bondage. I told him that I give you courage and I give you faith. And long as you keep the faith in me, you will never be alone. And I am calling him home because I must say his job was well done. So the angels flew away and went down to Memphis, Tennessee. And they went to the hospital where Dr. Martin Luther King was laying down in the mall. And when they walked into the mall, and each angel stood on each side of his bedside, and they began to call his name. And they said, Martin, Martin. And Martin gently opened his eyes. And he looked at the angels. He looked to the right and he looked to the left. And they said, Martin, we come to take you home. He said, because God has given us specific instruction to bring you home to rest. Martin looked at the angels and he said, no, I cannot leave my people because my job is not done yet. And the angels at that time said, Martin, God said for you to come home. And the angels at that time began to tell Martin, as they say, Martin, oh, Martin Luther King, you're free at last. You're free at last. Thank God Almighty, you are free at last. Martin, oh, Martin Luther King, you know you've been running for such a long time. So come on home and take your rest. You know, thank God Almighty, you are free at last. And Martin gently rise up off the bed. And he stood up straight. And the angels, one stood on the right side of Martin, and the other stood on the left. And they walked down the hall. And as they got to the doorway, they lifted up, they flapped their wings, and they flew away out of sight.